From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo. This is From the South. The Venezuelan government has closed the main border crossings with Colombia at the start of a day of tense expectation. This was the scene on one of the border bridges in the early hours of the morning. The Venezuelan opposition and its international allies have said they will try to force the so-called humanitarian aid across the border in the coming hours. Both the Venezuelan government and others have warned this could be a provocation to trigger an intervention. Our correspondent Madeline Garcia is on the Venezuelan side of the border. She sent this report just after dawn broke.
We are at the San Antonio roundabout. Behind me, you can see the National Guard, and further behind them is the Simón Bolívar International Bridge. Yesterday, Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez said that the bridges leading to Colombia would be completely closed for a time, because of the serious and illegal threats by the Colombian government against the peace and Venezuelan sovereignty. Both the Venezuelan government and other countries have been warning for several days about the danger of aggression behind the so-called humanitarian aid. There is already a small group of opposition activists gathered over here. They wanted to reach the international bridge to fetch these supposedly humanitarian supplies. We'll be here to bring you details of whatever happens as the day develops in San Antonio del Táchira. All the bridges are closed, as I said, including the Tienditas Bridge, which has been the focus of this confrontation promoted by the Colombian government. That's where the stage is set up for the Concert for Peace Against War, which began yesterday and will continue today with more than 250 performers from Venezuela and other countries. We'll have more later.
We thank Madeline for that report. In the last hour, groups of opposition activists confronted the National Guard at Ureña, also on the border with Colombia. They threw stones at the security forces, who responded with tear gas. Both Russia and China warned on Friday that the aid operation planned for this Saturday could see acts of provocation. The Venezuelan government says it is determined to preserve peace, but it will also defend the country's sovereignty. The Venezuelan opposition and its allies are also planning to force aid across the border from Brazil. Left-wing parties and social movements there have signed a manifesto calling for dialogue as the way to resolve the political crisis in Venezuela. Our correspondent Brian Muir has those details.
Brazilian left-wing political parties, including the PT, the PSB, and the PCB, as well as labor union confederations like CUT and large social movements like the MST and the MTST, all signed a peace manifesto in solidarity with the Venezuelan government and the Maduro administration yesterday in Roraima. Now, the document says that it repudiates any so-called humanitarian actions conducted by the Brazilian government in cooperation with the US government, or as it says, in subordination to the US government, and it calls for peaceful dialogue as a solution to any conflict that's happening in Venezuela, in accordance with recommendations that were made by Pope Francis and the governments of Uruguay and Mexico. On Thursday the 21st, PT Congressmen Paulo Pimenta and Paulo Teixeira introduced a motion to try to block Brazil's participation in the humanitarian mission by summoning Bolsonaro's ministers to explain exactly what they were doing and then bringing the issue to a vote. But it did not advance quick enough. Meanwhile, Paulo Pimenta, who's also the president of PT in Congress, he spread out on his social media yesterday that the bullets used in the shootings in Roraima that resulted in the death of one indigenous person were not Venezuelan military bullets, and that this reminded him of events in 2002 during the US-backed coup in Venezuela, when right-wing forces were killing their own people to try and blame it on Chavez administration.
And as we heard from Brian, violence broke out near the border between Venezuela and Brazil on Friday. The president of Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly reported that one person died and another was injured. The victims are believed to have been trying to block the road so that vehicles of the Venezuelan armed forces could not pass. Initial reports linked the armed forces to the shooting, but ballistic reports suggest the bullets came from guns belonging to violent opposition groups. And after misinformation about this event spread across the media, the Venezuelan foreign minister said the country's armed forces had nothing to do with the shooting. The minister added that it has been proven that violent opposition groups fired the lethal shoot. Jorge Arreaza was addressing reporters at the United Nations in New York.
What you said today in the state of Bolivar, this is inconsistent. The arms they used with the weapons of the Bolivarian armed forces. Some of the wounded people are wounded by arrows. It's very easy to be close to a border and say it was the Venezuelan people, it was Maduro who shot his people. You know the story very well, and any event that happens will be blamed on President Maduro, the National Bolivarian Forces, the government of Venezuela, and the constitutional entities of Venezuela. This is the sketch of the United States.
When asked what orders the Venezuelan army has if tensions were to rise in the border, Arreaza said that the Bolivarian armed forces will never be ordered to act against the people.
Our National Bolivarian Armed Forces protects national sovereignty and would never act in a disproportionate way against the people or the citizens.
The Venezuelan foreign minister has also said that the government has not had any sort of communication with the opposition regarding the so-called humanitarian aid they want to bring into the country.
There is no communication. When a country has a need, that country asks for it. United Nations activates, and one way or the other, as I said, purchase and the country pays to avoid blockade or donation, in any case, or cooperation through some programs. It's a bilateral issue between one country and the UN system. And we wouldn't negotiate with the United States, absolutely nothing. We are a sovereign and dignified country.
And the UN Secretary General has urged against any use of violence in Venezuela.
Any loss of life is regrettable. I think especially looking ahead for tomorrow, the Secretary General strongly appeals for violence to be avoided. As you know, he's been following the situation in Venezuela with increasing concern, and we will obviously keep a very close eye on what happens tomorrow, and again, very much appeal to ensure that there is no violence.
Thousands of people gathered on Friday on the Venezuelan side of the border with Colombia for a concert in defense of peace. With the slogan "For War Nothing," the concert began the day before the Venezuelan opposition said it planned to force the so-called humanitarian aid across the border.
The Venezuelan people want peace. We don't want to be interfered with. We don't believe in their invasion. We want our country to remain free and sovereign. And that humanitarian aid, there is a way that the US and many other countries always use to appropriate the wealth of other countries. In this case, they are after our oil, our minerals, and other resources we have.
Thousands also turned out for another concert a few hundred meters away on the Colombian side of the border. This one was organized by British businessman Richard Branson to support the Venezuelan opposition. The attendance seemed to be much lower than the 200,000 promised by the organizers. Social organizations in Peru have demanded that President Martín Vizcarra reject the ongoing meddling of the Lima Group and the government of the United States in Venezuela. Let's find out more.
These people arrived to the office of the foreign minister to deliver a petition in which they reject Peru's foreign policy, which they say is promoting meddling in Venezuela through the Lima Group.
We are against war. We support a peaceful solution in Venezuela. We condemn the economic blockade and we recognize President Nicolás Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela. We intend to see the foreign minister rectify their mistake, because neither President Vizcarra nor his foreign policy represent the majority of people in Peru.
Peruvian social movements also demanded that the Peruvian government reject military invasion attempts in Venezuela through the so-called humanitarian aid being offered.
That is the Trojan horse of imperialism in order to enter Venezuela, to destabilize and overthrow the democratically elected government of Nicolás Maduro Moros. On May 20 of 2018, there were elections in Venezuela, certified by the Carter Association and other international organizations that took part in accompanying the process. There is no reason, there is no justification for the United States to enter Venezuela.
These activists will remain on alert in order to defend the sovereignty of Latin American nations.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More than 200,000 electoral delegates in Cuba will take part in the constitutional referendum to be voted on Sunday. Just days before the vote, our correspondent in Havana, Luis Auti, has the latest.
Yes, good morning. Only 2 days left for the constitutional referendum and everything is on the way now. Everything is set up. The National Electoral Commission says that 1,000 ballots have been printed and properly certified to be used next day. Tomorrow, Saturday, they will be sending those ballots to all over the polling colleges all over the country. The ambient here in the country is totally calm. Unlike other countries, these kind of processes here in Cuba are lived in a quiet way. There's no riot, there's no marches, there's anything. Also, the transparency of the processes of this process have been applauded by several medias, not only in Cuba but in overseas. Students from elementary school and mid school will be taking care of the earnest during the election day, and we have to remember that the 60% of the constitutional draft was modified after it was put into consideration of the citizenship. So it's true that this is a constitution made by the people and for the people. So far, everything is quiet here. We are waiting for what happened next Sunday. It will be ratified or not. It depends on the citizenship of the country. We'll be back with more soon. Now I'm back to you.
And Luis is also reporting on the island's cartoonists who have been hard at work making people laugh and think about the issues at stake.
This is what Havana looks like with only a few hours to go before the popular referendum where Cubans will ratify or reject a new constitution. For some time now, the referendum has been everywhere, dominating public spaces, the pages of newspapers and magazines, and the TV and radio headlines. The media interests include cartoons like this. The artists know that visual humor is one of the best weapons to defending an idea. That's why Adán Iglesias has dedicated 15 cartoons to this topic. He says he has many reasons, but one in particular.
I am banking on a yes vote for one major reason, which perhaps you share with me. I am a father. I have children. I am deeply interested in a bright and prosperous future for me and my children. And I know that all the analysis that has been done by the population can give us a better country from all points of view. Even from the point of view of humor, we can have more publications, more outlets. I have faith in all this.
For the all-hander lass, a good cartoon is the one that not only makes people laugh, but also makes them think. Therefore, he wanted to show the little-known moments that Cuba experiences, as more than 8 million citizens took part in an unprecedented popular debate to build, together, the law of laws.
Here in Cuba we have a saying that goes anything they did. Even the cat did. Even the cat ate here. Even the cat danced here. Then even the cat is included. And that really happened. People went with their pets to the meetings. So even the cats took part in the process.
Enrique Lacoste is one of the sharpest creative minds of graphic humor in Cuba. With simple lines, he can depict what is proposed by the new constitution in matter of gender, for example. Dazzling everybody, he can even draw a contemporary José Martí who votes for what he always dreamed, a basic love of the republic that expresses the full dignity of human beings. His skillful pen also shows how confrontation between Cuba and the United States has been a constant of history.
This constitution, adapted to the new times, is a constitution that makes our society more democratic, more fair, with more solidarity. It is a blow against the empire. This one shows the way they try to distort the reality of a revolution. So you have the soldier who is voting and he says to imperialism, this is a socialist democracy campaign. So we will go ahead with more socialism, more social justice, more democracy.
Suggestive and original, these vignettes are drawings of the Cubans' reality now. But soon they take their place in history as the reflection of a time when the Cubans defended, at the ballot box, the kind of country they wanted. Luis Autier Canton, Telesur, Havana.
A group of left-wing political parties from the Mesoamerica region have gathered in Nicaragua to analyze the situation in the region. More details in this report.
Left-wing political parties from 10 countries in the Mesoamerican region gathered for a 3-day forum to analyze the situation of the American continent. At the end of the meeting, they sent a message of solidarity with the people of Venezuela and the Bolivarian Revolution.
We defend the principles of independence, sovereignty and self-determination. We send our solidarity to the Venezuelan government and President Nicolás Maduro. Bolivarian Venezuela pushed forward revolutionary changes and social advancements in all Latin America and the Caribbean. But now the country faces imperialist attack by the United States.
Nicolás Maduro.
According to some participants, like Mexican lawmaker Ricardo Canto Garza, this gathering has strengthened the unity of people and has made clear they have an enemy in common.
All left-wing progressive forces must unite to stop an invasion against the Venezuelan people. As Donald Trump said a few days ago, they are not only interested in an intervention in Venezuela, but in all countries that have tried to build a socialist government, looking for a better and more equal society.
The meeting coincided with the 85th anniversary of the death of Nicaraguan revolutionary leader Augusto César Sandino. President Daniel Ortega gave a closing speech and said peace has to return to the region.
The spirit of Latin America and Caribbean people is characterized by their commitment with peace. All people, all Latin America and Caribbean governments. This region is a region of peace.
In this way, the meeting came to a close, with hopes that imperialist interests don't bring war to the region.
19 Spanish-speaking teen girls who were held as sex slaves in Trinidad are now in better health after being rescued by police. The National Security Minister provided an update on the investigation.
Young ladies are getting
better in health. Some of them had some health issues, so we had to move very quickly. We were providing the social services side, including, from the psychology point of view. It has been a difficult operation because of that, exactly as you say, the language barrier. So we've also had to get persons in to assist the social workers and the police investigators. So I can tell you there's an active police investigation taking place. There's a completion of statements from the girls taking place and the gathering of evidence taking place. I don't want to say more than that because it's an active investigation and I expect the leads to be pursued. But the girls are being well looked after, and I'm very thankful to the Ministry of Social Development for that.
Healthcare in Haiti is in a state of collapse. The government spent just 4% of its budget on health, which is now out of reach for most Haitians. Our correspondent Pablo Perez went to find out more.
Julianne lives in poverty, like 80% of the Haitian population. When she broke her leg, she went to the public hospital, but she came away frustrated.
They want me to get some tests, and I don't have any cent to pay for them. I don't know what I would do, and they didn't give me any medication.
The majority of public health centers in Port-au-Prince lack painkillers and other medical supplies, sometimes even water. So patients just get advice or prescription for drugs they can't afford to buy.
We really aren't treated well. As soon as you go into hospital, you realize there is no medical care. They don't even see us as people.
The Haitian government spends just 4% of its budget on health. Experts say that the problems in the Haitian health service go back a long way, under several administrations. Some hospitals are almost empty, the buildings are in decay, and they have neither medicine nor surgical supplies.
They lack resources, they lack staff, and they lack money. It's a disgrace that the government spends money on things that are of no use at all, while people die in the hospitals.
This health expert says that even with limited resources, much could be done to improve Haitian healthcare. There was an attempt to copy the Cuban model, but this government stopped it.
The idea was to build up that system, but the big difference is that in Cuba they had a revolution.
Haiti has one of the lowest levels of life expectancy, at around 60. The failures of the healthcare system and the siphoning of funds are one of the many reasons for the protests seen in recent weeks.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. In the last few minutes, a violent incident has occurred on the Simón Bolívar Bridge between Venezuela and Colombia. Two armored personnel carriers, apparently belonging to the Venezuelan National Guard, crashed into the barriers blocking the border crossing. The reasons are not yet clear, but some sources are saying that it may be a false flag operation aimed at blaming the Venezuelan side for violence. We'll bring you more information as we get it. Moving on, Nigerians are trooping to polling stations to choose their next president for the next 4 years after an unexpected week-long delay. More than 120,000 polling stations opened early in the morning all across the country, from the city of Lagos in the south to Kano in the north and the country's rural heartlands. Results are expected to be announced from early next week, with the winner gaining control of Africa's biggest economy and most populous nation.
Voting for my future, to vote for the right person that will lead us for the next 4 years. That's why it's important for me to vote today, because I'm voting for my future.
4 years ago, it was a nightmare because we had to come, do the accreditation, and then we have to go back and come back later. But I just spent barely 25 minutes, so I think it's an improved process.
President Muhammadu Buhari has casted his vote in his hometown, Daura, in the north of the country. Buhari, who arrived in the company of his wife, said he is hopeful for securing a second term. He urged Nigerians to come out in numbers and vote for their preferred candidates.
My constituency here, people are already lined up, so I will save time to go to the Thank you very much.
How do you feel about this exercise so far yourself?
Well, so far so good. Nigerians understand that they are behaving themselves.
Are you all full? Are you all full?
What?
Are you all full? Are you hopeful, sir?
Very hopeful indeed.
But if you lose this election, will you accept defeat and congratulate the winner and hand over power eventually?
I will congratulate myself. I'm going to be the winner. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, the main contender and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has voted in his home state of Adamawa in the northeast of the country. He is confident of winning and says he is looking forward to a peaceful transition. The two opponents were in the same camp in 2015 when Buhari's All Progressives Congress defeated the government of Goodluck Jonathan. Abubakar later abandoned the APC and rejoined the People's Democratic Party, or PDP, under which he had served as vice president. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
From here to beyond the South. From here